met Adelheid Benjamin, Tilla, as she preferred to be called, when she was my mother's neighbor. They shared a porch at the entrance to their apartments. She and her husband, Sigmund, were very kind to my mother, who lived alone, always asking my mom if she needed anything or taking her along when they went shopping. When Sigmund died, Tilla became very attached to my mother. She even checked on her when she wasn't feeling well, and keeping in touch with me when she felt it was necessary. She was very kind to my mother. And when my mother died, Tilla missed my mother's friendship and turned to me. She began calling me and behaving toward me as if I were her daughter. She had no children of her own, and her brother and the few other family members she had were quite elderly and certainly less available to be very helpful to her. After a while, I found myself fulfilling the same duties for her that I had provided for my own mother. In fact, she became part of my extended family and was always included as such on holidays and celebrations. My late husband and I even put together a 90th birthday party for her. She seemed very touched by that. She told me she wanted me to be the heir to her, what turned out to be meager belongings. I vehemently resisted, but she just as vehemently persisted and insisted, even having a lawyer draw up her will to make it legal. It was impossible to say no to Tilla Benjamin, so I reluctantly agreed. We sometimes took her out for Sunday dinner, and as we rode along in the car, she would take such delight in each passing season. In the spring, when the earth became green again, she would almost literally drink in the beauty of the earth's renewal, exclaiming joyfully at the sight of budding trees and flowers. And even in the winter, the bitterest cold days, she would remark on the refreshing crispness of the weather. Actually, come to think of it, she always found something she was thrilled to acknowledge. She really appreciated just being part of the wonders of life. She didn't like to discuss her past life in Germany and how she came to be here in America. Eventually, however, she showed me some of the artifacts of her history. Others I found later after her death. Mrs. Benjamin arrived in the United States after booking passage on the MS St. Louis in 1939. The voyage of the MS St. Louis was an attempt by over 900 Jewish passengers to enter the United States via Cuba as refugees. A United States immigration law passed in 1924, however, greatly limited European entry to the United States and put quotas on how many immigrants would be allowed from each country. By the time the St. Louis departed Hamburg, Germany in May of 1939, most of those quotas had been filled for the year. The United States State Department decided not to lift the quota restriction for refugees fleeing Nazi Germany. A cousin who was already living in the States had sent Tilla a list of all the official papers she needed to immigrate. Mrs. Benjamin was one of the very few passengers found to have the correct paperwork necessary to disembark in Havana and make her way to the United States. Her immigrant paperwork for the United States was approved because her husband had been a resident in the United States since 1936. Of the utmost importance was her marriage certificate, which she had also translated into English. She saved all of these documents carefully, perhaps for concern that someday she might need them again. Mrs. Benjamin. She never took no for an answer. I personally knew that from my many interactions with her. She persisted in pleading her case until she got her way. In general, her manner was such that it was almost impossible to refuse her request. This characteristic, I have no doubt, saved her life. Only 22 passengers on the St. Louis were found to have valid visas for the United States. At some point in the cruise, it became known that the passengers would not be permitted to land in the United States, and so disembarking in Cuba became a highly desirable port, certainly rather than returning to Germany. The port was understandably besieged with efforts to get off the ship there. Most were refused. Despite pleas from the passengers and the captain, both the United States and Canada closed their doors, and the ship was forced to make a return journey. When the St. Louis returned to Europe, several countries, including Great Britain, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France, took in the then stateless passengers. But when the Germans invaded Western Europe, many of these former passengers once again found themselves under Nazi rule. Sad to say, it is now estimated that 254 of the original passengers died in the Holocaust. When Tilla died, it fell to me to go through her belongings to organize and dispose of them appropriately. I was astonished at some of the things I found, things that spoke to me loudly and uncovered facets of her being that she herself had not revealed with such clarity. For example, there were dozens and dozens of scraps of paper scattered throughout her belongings on which she had written the date of her arrival to this country, as if that date should never ever be forgotten. The subtext of which was her gratitude for escaping a much less benign fate. When Mrs. Benjamin was leaving Germany, her mother-in-law gave her 2 suitcases that were filled with German prayer books. It was kind of prescient. The mother-in-law said, "Take these books with you." They were all in German with Hebrew. Mrs. Benjamin had worked as a cook when she came to this country, and she would often make me cookies. In fact, when at 93 she fell and was in the hospital as a result, she gave me a list of ingredients to purchase, including schnapps, who knew, so she could make me a Linzer pie, as she called it, when she came home. She never left the hospital. I was shocked. Frankly, I never expected her to die just yet, never mind that she was 93. In her simple way, she was a force. Not fragile and weak at all, but strong. A true survivor. And now, whenever I see Linzer Tort on a menu, I order it and think of Mrs. B, how much she loved and appreciated the long years with which she was blessed. Adelheid Tilla Benjamin was just plain cute in her earnest expressiveness. She always made me smile. She was an upbeat, energetic presence. And how fitting that her essence will be alive in memory for a long time to come.